Hello, everyone. Welcome to a live dev mentoring session. In those sessions, we help students of the Essential Developer Academy to solve any software development problems they are facing. And today, we're helping our student, Micah. Hello.
Hello, Caio.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
And also with us, Mike, instructor in the Academy, and Bogdan, instructor in the Academy.
Hi, everyone.
All right. So, Micah, for how long have you been a software developer?
So far, it's been 3.5 years. Yeah.
Okay. And you say that your challenge today is that you're going through some interviews and you would like some feedback on your test projects, correct?
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Especially the phase where they ask you to build a demo app for them to analyze your skills. Yeah.
Right. And what kind of positions are you looking for at the moment? Senior,
Mid. Yeah.
Okay.
Mid-level, okay.
Mid-level. And at the moment, you already have a mid-level position?
Yes, I already do. But I feel that I face the problem where I would like to be a senior, but I don't know whether I'm there yet. And I don't know how to evaluate like the skills that you need to be a senior. So that's why I am still aiming for the mid-level first, and then maybe afterwards aim towards the most like senior position after a while.
Right. Yeah. So about this specifically, like senior positions is very subjective, like depends on the company you're applying to. So one way of knowing what most companies are looking for in a senior position is just to start reading you go to the careers pages in companies you're interested in, and you see if they have senior positions and what kind of skills they require there. Right. And then you start finding skills that match. Like in every company you see, they're asking for it, like some kind of like automation, continuous integration, testing, architecture, like solid understanding of the basics like computer science and things like this. So just by checking those positions, don't even need to apply to them, right? You just do some research what the most companies are looking for. You can find this information.
Got it.
Even apply to some positions, you're starting to feel confident and see how you do in the interviews.
Yeah.
You start learning.
Waters.
Yeah.
Yeah, and what I notice what companies usually do, so they advertise for like a general position. They don't specify whether it's a senior role or it's a junior role or it's a mid-level kind of role. So they just put the job ad and then they evaluate you during the interview. So that's a bit tricky as well because you don't know what you're interviewing for at the end of the day. So you don't know before going to the interview, okay, do I revise like the really specific core stuff, like, the expectations are not clear?
Yeah, usually they send a test project, like you said, and based on your code, they will kind of direct you in different paths of the hiring process. If they think you are more junior, more mid-level, more senior, more lead, more tech lead, and then they start directing you through all the stages of the interviews. If they feel like, okay, the code looks senior level, they're gonna put you through a hiring process of the senior level. It will be completely different the next steps. But usually the first step in those companies is the same for everyone. It's like a test project that's not that complicated. Like a simple test project, like just rendering some things on a table view that come from an API. But based on that, how you implemented that, they pretty much can tell like your level. If there are bugs, if there are mistakes, if you have tests, if the tests are fast, if they are good, and then you start separating based on the test project. So doing well on the test project will already put you on the senior path.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And even if there's no senior position available, they still got your information and probably going to contact you soon. That's why they I think one main reason to not post these description levels in the job ad is to give the company this flexibility. So we're going to do some interviews, we're going to see some candidates, and if there are any good ones, we'll keep them in our short list. And if we have a position now, fine. Otherwise, they'll, I don't know, contact you in 3 months and say, okay, are you still available? Because we have this opening now. So it's like Kayo said,
Oh,
ideally,
okay.
you want to do as best as possible in that interview. So the higher you score, it gives you much more I don't know, room
Possibility
for
to.
possibility with that company. Because unless it's a really small team, they usually have like mid positions, junior positions, senior positions, even leadership roles available. But they're not gonna talk to you about each individual one, like especially with the big companies. They have so many positions that they still want to see what you're capable of. So it's like Kayo said, that same interview can be resolved in different ways at different levels, depending on how you, like, what's your skill level at the time, right?
Yeah, and different companies have different like bars. Like some companies are what they consider a senior developer is much higher bar than other companies, right?
Yeah.
That varies a lot. And big
Yeah,
tech companies, yeah, sorry, go on.
I was wondering whether that depends on not like the country that you're applying to as well. I mean, technically, like a good iOS developer would be recognized whether, I don't know, it's the West or it's Europe or it's Asia, right? But maybe if you apply to the West, the benchmark is a bit higher. I don't know. Do you find that true, or do you
When I was
like
living in
maybe?
Brazil, I always thought that like the bar was higher in the US, in Europe, in the UK, until I moved to those places and I found out that actually it's the same, you know, like it's you usually
Okay.
have this like the grass is greener somewhere else, but it's usually very similar, you know. Because nowadays everything is so connected. Like the community we have here, there's people from everywhere, and everyone is, you know, looking to be the best self every day, like studying and learning these very specialized skills the companies are looking for. So, you know, there are people from everywhere working for companies from everywhere, remotely or relocating. So the knowledge is out there with the internet, you know, like the knowledge is out there.
Yes, definitely. I agree.
And there are great companies as well in many countries. In some countries, there are more good companies than others, but every country has good companies, right?
Yes.
There are successful, rich companies everywhere as well.
Yeah, that's true.
So it's a matter of finding a good match. But I had this feeling as well when I was in Brazil. I always thought that things would be different until I started working in teams in the UK and the code was a mess. And I was thought, oh no, the code there will be perfect, everything will be tested. And I started working in London in a big team and it was a mess. So, you know,
Yeah, actually, one of my mentors, when I just joined, he told me that it was like no matter how established the company is or how big it is, never expect that you will find a clean code base over there. It's actually most probably it's the opposite. Like they have many problems that they expect you to come and solve.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
It's all over the place. You can see a super clean code base in a small team, and you'd expect it to find it at I don't know, big company, big tech company, but they also have it. So like if you go
Yeah.
to, I don't know, I have a friend who's working for Facebook, so yeah, he's working on a clean code base. Like
Okay.
they still do it. Like the big names are still there for a reason. So, but it's like Kayo said. Like sometimes we fear too much that everybody's doing a perfect job and we're the only one that are not
Yeah.
are not reaching that standard, and it's not true. Like and it's, you shouldn't, or we shouldn't use this information just to, I don't know, like get an excuse and continue to do, I don't know, suboptimal work.
Suboptimal work,
Yeah, just an incentive. Okay, I can do better, and I can still find a place to do that. So
Yeah.
it's like,
I guess we all keep learning in that industry. So you never reach a peak where you're like, oh, I'm done with learning or getting better, because like you always have new stuff to learn. Yeah.
Absolutely. You can see or get inspiration from people like Robert Martin, Kent Beck, that they've been doing it for like 30, 40 years, and they just keep learning and releasing new books, and with new ideas they tested. They're still working and developing software, and it's an infinite journey. And if you enjoy the journey, you're going to enjoy your life because work is a big part of our life, right?
Yes,
So
right.
the idea is to enjoy the journey as we go. So finding a good match in the company is not just the company, the team as well, because big companies like Facebook, they have many teams, and there are some teams that care about clean code and tests and the agile principles, and other teams no, they just believe in let's move fast and break things, and we deal with things on
Later.
as they come later. So even within big companies there will be different teams. So when you're applying for a position, try to have lunch with your team before accepting the offer. Try to meet the people you're going to be working with, the manager, and see if it aligns, like with your view of how things should be, what makes you happy at work.
Okay. Is that something that you typically like you can ask, right, to meet the team before accepting the offer, as you mentioned?
Yes, if you are in the same city, you just go to office usually and you have lunch with them. That's a common thing.
Okay.
Now,
Okay.
if you are applying for a position in another country, usually you do a hangout on Zoom. It's not as good, but at least you get to meet them before, right? So when they send you an offer, say, okay, before I accept the offer, I really enjoy the whole process. I would just like to meet the team and my manager and talk to them, see if it's a strong
Okay,
match.
yeah. Yeah, that's doable.
Yeah, they're not going to feel bad or anything. It just may actually count positive to you to say that, you're a person that is actually looking for a good fit.
Exactly. Reaching out, making sure that everything is, aligned.
Got
Actually, like
you.
in my
Okay.
experience, even like interviews I've been through in the past, that they invited me to have lunch with them before sending me an offer. So it goes both ways as well.
Okay.
That's important. Make sure you find a good fit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But if it's not a good fit and then it's hard, it just started and you need to either quit, and it's not a good position. So try to filter in this stage, because like an interview goes both ways. They are filtering candidates and you are filtering companies as well, right?
Companies, yes, that's true.
We shouldn't be maximizing to pass all the interviews, but to pass and get offers from the right ones,
Mm-hmm.
the matches.
Yeah.
And right is a personal thing, right? A company that might not be right for me might be perfect for you, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I think something that I really look for in a company, especially right now, if they give their prospective employees the ability to, like, they give you a flexible timetable where you are able to cater for your learning as well as part of the hours that you deliver, right? It's just not like you work 8 hours per day and they expect you like to just like all the 8 hours are solely used to develop features, you know. So at the end of the day, you're delivering features, yes, but you don't get the opportunity to learn as much. You know, you don't have the time to really look at the architecture. It's just like, okay, I have this deadline, I have to make this deadline, let's do things with what I know, rather than like pushing the ball, looking at, okay, is there a better way of doing this,
Right.
you know. Yeah.
So try to find a team that really cares about uh, education. And
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot of teams, they have budget, like a quarter budget or a
Yeah.
yearly budget for education, and they can even give you like some Friday offs for taking courses. This is very common for junior and mid-level, especially because they want to get you to that senior level as quick as possible because you'll be more productive for them. So when you apply to this position, it's much more easier to get this help to that,
Yeah.
to get the leap to that senior level.
Yeah, even with the course that, like, I am a student of the Essential Developer Academy, right? So even with the course, one of the parts that I struggle with is that, like, even after work, making time to watch the videos and getting the practice, like, sometimes it's hard to know how to balance, So it would be better if I could find a team that actually supports both. Like the learning as well as you working on their features and getting things done for them.
Yeah.
Right. So how far are you in the lectures now in the program, would you say,
I
roughly?
just started the persistence layer. Yeah.
The second module. Okay.
Yeah.
Right. So you're struggling with time then to finish the program,
Yeah.
to manage, come back from work already tired or have other priorities in personal life and
Because like after work, typically I try to apply. So like 1 hour goes like in applying for companies, like especially when you're researching about the company, you have to write an adequate cover letter, right? So that takes time. And if you are refining your CV as well to make sure that you have the keywords. So like after that hour, like you're pretty much like tired with work and with that part. So it's a bit difficult to cater for education after that. Because especially at
Right.
night, you feel like you don't feel like going back to doing the same like educational work related stuff. So then I tried like even to work out sometimes or like any kind of other hobby. Like I'm more inclined to do that than like sit and watch the videos. So yeah, I struggle with that a lot.
Right. But this may be a problem because we have many stages in the interview process, right? You have the research and then you apply. And then the first filter is the CV, right? That's why you're maximizing, like tailoring your CV for that company,
Yeah.
doing that research. And then you send the CV and the company's like, okay, I like the CV. And then they call you and then you have to do a test project. Now, if you don't do the lectures, this might be
Yeah.
the bottleneck. You do everything right here, but this is preventing you from getting the job. So you need to organize your
Yeah.
time to finish the lectures, because otherwise there'll be a problem here and you'll get stuck here. You don't have a nice CV, you have the right attitude, you're looking for a good team, maybe you'll get stuck here. So we need to split the energy you use in all these steps here because they are all
Got
important.
it.
So I think it's a matter of prioritizing those hours, like whatever hours you have available each day, let's say 8 for everything, like for work, for study. I think it's very important to ask this question, like, are you okay with the level you're currently on? And if the answer is no, and study is going to get you to the next level, then I think that's number one priority. And for me, as I usually schedule my day, that should be my first task of the day. Like that's where I want to get my like 100%, if that's possible. Maybe some days it's 80 or something because of, I don't know, invalues in our life, but nevertheless, and I would focus on that as opposed to getting my best hours to do my job, which I'm not very happy with, and then at the end of the day maybe squeeze time to study for the thing that's going to get me to where I want to get. So you see, it's like kind of on a longer term, if you scale that, it won't get you where you want. So if I were to do it, and I know other people who have even like took a sabbatical just to study and be able to get to the next level, just to fully focus on that studying. And yeah, it's painful if you do that, but you're fully focused. So I'm not saying that's always the solution, but definitely I would put more emphasis on this studying and on quality studying. So if I'm just watching a video and not taking notes, I can burn so many hours and I still haven't learned anything. So we know the difference, right? It's one is entertainment and the other is actual learning. So
Work. Yeah.
I would really encourage you to try to find that time and to like organize your day such as your priorities comes first, and then other things like leisure and whatever other activities you want to do.
Yeah, right.
I've done this sabbatical approach and it worked for me. Like I saved enough to say, okay, I don't need to work for 3 months. I have enough savings that for 3 months I don't need to work without changing my lifestyle. So
Okay.
now I'm going to take some time to actually improve my skills, because the next time I get a new job, I want to take a leap, you know?
I actually considered it to take a sabbatical to solely focus on studying for a while, but yeah, making the decision is a bit difficult as well.
Yes.
But
So you don't
yeah.
need to do it, right? If you organize yourself, you don't need to do it. So in my case, I saved money for 3 months, and in 1 month, I got so much done that I got the job I wanted, and that's it. And I carry on with a bigger salary, a higher position that I was looking for, in a team, in a company that I was looking for as well.
That's nice.
So even though I planned for the worst, like for 3 months, but I was not expecting it to take 3 months. You know, it's just like worst case scenario, I can be 3 months without work. But
Okay.
if you organize yourself, you don't need to do it. You know, if you organize your time. If you're happy at work, how things are going, you're just looking for that extra leap, then you organize your time and you can finish the program. Because if you finish the program, you will ace this project.
Yeah.
And if you ace this project, you can even get a senior position. Because another thing that is important when you get a position in a company, it's much easier to negotiate salary when you're joining the company than after you join and you want to increase your salary, you know?
Yeah,
Getting
yeah,
a
yeah. I
raise is
experienced
harder.
that.
Yeah. Let's say my goal is to make like 200K in the US as a senior. If you enter in this company with 120K as a mid-level, it will be very hard to get to this 200K senior. But if you prepare yourself and you enter as a 200K senior, maybe in 2 years you are already in 2025, you know, like you.
Yeah.
But if you enter as mid, then it will be much harder for you to get from mid to senior in this level here. It's much easier to negotiate when you're entering the company.
Got it.
That's why I recommend that you focus on your education in this specific level you are.
That's the thing I was gonna underline, because usually when we study, we kind of maybe are not sure exactly what we need to study. Your huge advantage is we have all this information in the program, like structured. You just need to follow it. Like you don't need to do anything else, just one thing. It has a clear path. Everything is in order. Um, I really recommend you do it, and not just once. Like finish it with good quality, with good pace, as fast as possible, then do it again, like until it's like
Clicks.
Okay, gotcha.
yeah. You see? And I think instead of just maybe trying to get a bit of the program and maybe reading one chapter from one book and then two Medium articles and talk, like it creates so much noise that you're not learning anything. It's just random stuff. So I'd rather focus on one thing,
On that,
and
yeah.
that would be this program. I think for you it would make a huge difference if you put in
Got it.
the hours and you are committed to getting there, and you're already in, so you might as well get the most out of it, right?
Yeah, true. Yeah, I think I'll take this advice very seriously and I'll put in the hours from now on.
Nice.
Yeah, consistently, like it doesn't have to be, 2-3 hours, a day. Just consistently 30 minutes, 40 minutes every day. you know. And one thing you mentioned about the like CVs and the cover letters that you find yourself writing and refining, and you know the keywords. That's like maybe you know, it doesn't have to be like that. You know, like you design something once, you know, and you spend some time when you have to submit it. So it doesn't have to be like a mental task that, oh, you know, I have to
Okay, yeah.
do again, you know, design it again and again, or you know, because that's the
Yeah.
problem. You know, that's usually not the problem. You know, the problem is delivering what they want there. You know, and that's going to come from what Bogdan and Kaio are saying. It's like getting the knowledge.
Yes,
Yeah.
right.
I remember I spent a lot of time with my CV as well, and what happened is that it's pretty much guesswork because sometimes you don't even know if a person will read your CV. Maybe it's an AI machine. Now you need to guess what the AI is looking for, and you try to maximize keywords. But it's like it's a very hard game to play. You know,
Yeah, it
it's
is.
like blackjack. You're guessing if I'm gonna hit what the CV overlords are looking for. And then what I figured out in my career after reading books is that if I focus on my education, then I will even start getting recommendation from other people, and then everything gets much much easier.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's
And
true.
to a point now, I don't send CVs anymore. I always get a recommendation from someone. Someone, hey, I need someone to do an app for me. I say, oh, call Kaio. I work with him. He delivers on time, good quality work. That's it. So everything gets easier, and you work with people. You're gonna make an impression on them because of the quality work you deliver. Then when they go to another company, they're gonna move abroad. They want to bring with you. Because when you get into a company, they say, hey, do you have anyone to recommend? We have some more positions open. Sure. I work with Micah, and it was great working with her. The quality of the work is amazing. Let's bring her. So this maximized much more my education, like improving the quality of my work than this part here.
Yeah, right. Because, yeah, as you mentioned, this is the bottleneck that I've been facing as well, because I realized when I send my CV and my cover letter, I have like a lot of replies, but then when it comes like to the like test project or whatever, like it doesn't go as well. So yeah, I think I really need to take the course very, very seriously to move to the next level.
Yeah. Because there's not a lot of like I don't think the CV is like a qualifier or disqualifier for a job. So it's kind of the same information, like what's your overall level of experience, and then like all those keywords. I don't think they matter that much.
Yeah.
Like at least in my experience, when I was more junior, I had like a huge CV, and I would list there every technology I ever touched. So if I work with a framework for 2 days, I would put it there. Like, yeah, I have something. And then I would go to an interview maybe, and somebody would start asking me about that thing. I was like, no, I don't know. I don't know the details. Like I only work with it for 1 day or something like that. And as my experience grew, now my CV is getting smaller and smaller, and just keep removing stuff. Like they're irrelevant, and I keep getting better positions. So I don't think, at least in my experience, I don't think it's the CV that's kind of driving where this thing is going, because you're always gonna, like, if your CV is decent enough, you're gonna get to the step where you do the test project. Or there, if you have like, but that's for like a really strong reputation. On some cases I didn't even had to do the test project, because I had a direct recommendation, and they said, okay, Bogdan, are you available, because we want to work with you. But that's only when somebody there knows, like Kaio said, somebody worked with you before and knows exactly what you're capable of, and that's where you don't need to do a test project. Otherwise, you kind of do. So most, like I think 99% of the companies will want to see you code before they hire you. So I think that is where it can get really in many directions depending on how you do that. CV is like more like, I don't know, they kind of want to look at it, but it's not like it's gonna drop you or anything if you I don't know, miss something in your CV, or Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
And it's also much easier to negotiate as well when you enter through recommendation. Because imagine, as Bogdan said, someone comes to you and say, doesn't even send a test project or doesn't even ask your CV. You were recommended, say, hey, Micah, we want to work with you. Let's make it work. Okay, now imagine when you go to the salary negotiation, it's on you, like you can come with the price that you think it's fair. And the negotiation is much easier because like you're already sold to them. Like they just need to, sign the check.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true.
And the
Okay,
only
so-
way to get there, sorry, Kai, I just want to wrap it here. It's like you have to have this mentality of over delivering. You have to impress people you work with to get to that level. There's no way around it. Like if you're mediocre or under, nobody's gonna think about you and say, okay, I want to work with him or her. So you gotta do that extra work, and it doesn't have to be like if you are in a mid or junior position, you don't have to perform as a senior. You just have to be over
Good.
average or outstanding in that position. So say, okay, for a junior, she's very, very good. And that's where somebody will think about all the pool, like the pool of junior developers or mid developers they know and say, okay, I want to work with him or her because they were outstanding for that role. So
Yeah.
it's all down to the skills, not marketing that much. It's a part marketing, but the skills have to cover it. Otherwise, it's not going to work for too long.
Got it.
All right. So you say that your bottleneck in the interview is the test project. So let's have a look at the test project. First of all, what was the feedback you got on this project?
They did not give any specific feedback about it, but they just said that they got better solutions from other candidates, and that's it. There was no feedback or anything.
Okay.
Yeah.
So in this session, we'll be reviewing the code based on what we would be looking for in an interview for a mid-level position, because each interviewer will be looking for different things, based on their experience, based on their preferences, how they develop apps there at work, or like what they're used to.
Yeah, but they did give, like in the question, right? They did give like some instructions as to what they are looking at. And
Okay.
one thing that they mentioned was strong attention on quality and testing will be recognized. And the other one is use of MVC strongly discouraged. So they are really looking at testing, like unit testing, looks like.
MVC score?
Was discouraged?
The use of MVC is strongly discouraged in the solution that you yeah.
Okay.
And
it must have broken in the meantime.
the use of design patterns is inevitable. Like, those are the pointers. And the final thing is organization, separation of concerns, and clean code is essential.
Okay.
Great.
It's
like a good team.
Yeah, high level. All these things are.
Because they also say strong attention, right, to quality and testing. So like strong.
Yes, they did.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the strong attention was in bold as well.
All caps. Okay. And here's the project that you sent.
Yes, right.
Right. Did you send it exactly like this? Did you send the GitHub link? How was it?
So I just invited the people to the repo. Yeah, through the email that they gave me.
Okay.
So that they get access to it and then they can clone and look at the code.
So this is the first thing that they would see, right? This page.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. So one thing that I look when I open like a project that I received from a candidate is if they provided like clear instructions in the README file. I mean, some projects don't require many instructions, but like at least like how to open the project, how to build, if he has any dependencies that I need to install, you know, like you need to run pod install or something like that.
For the dependencies part, they just put in the interview question that they do not want us to use any external dependencies, and that should only happen if it's really needed.
Okay. That's very common in interviews. They want to see if you really understand the platform and you don't look for ready solutions all the time, to see if you have a strong, understanding of the platform. So I usually say don't use third-party dependencies, even if they say it's okay to use it.
Okay.
Because it shows that you can solve problems with the foundation frameworks, and it's nice, it's clean, it's tested, doesn't require any dependency. Because one thing that is a pain, I remember opening projects to review test projects, and I need to do pod install, but they were using a different version of pod that I don't have. I need to install pod now, and then I have a problem. The brew is broken, and I need to update brew, and suddenly half an hour passed, and I cannot even run the project. It's not a great experience. Like, you're probably gonna lose points there, right? So eliminate dependencies. You should open a project and should run Command R. It should run the app.
Okay. Yes. Got it.
So 100 points for you because you don't have dependencies. Good. Deployment target 12. Was this a requirement as well?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
The other repo, I actually started coding the solution when I was traveling. So I completely discarded the deployment target, which was originally set to the latest one. And then at the end of the solution, I was like, wait, the deployment target is actually 12. So I need to restart.
Okay. Yeah, so you wasted some time there, right? Because
right.
of that. So that's why it's important to really check the instructions carefully, because if you find out something after you spend like 3-4 days, it's going to be very hard to undo.
To undo, yeah.
And you already discussed the time is limited, and you're trying to organize your time, so you can save some time there, hopefully. Okay.
Yeah.
So one thing I would like to see here from candidates as well is a little description in the README of what kind of decisions you made. They say don't use MVC, and you say, okay, I decided to go with MVVM because blah blah blah, or MVP, why you made those decisions. Like a high level idea of like the decisions you made here, right? So I understand the thinking behind the decisions you made in the project. That will win points for you in the interview. You explain the reasoning, because maybe they will see something here they're not used to, like why is this here? But if you explain it, like, you don't wait for them to get confused. You explain up front. So another thing I look for is if the folder is clean, there is no unnecessary files and things like that. I saw that there are 2 projects. Why are there 2 projects?
The first one is because I had to cater for the iOS deployment target set to 12.0, right? So I already had the code for the project. It's just that I had to cater for the iOS deployment target. So I just moved the files from one project to another, to save time, because I didn't have the time to put everything in just one repo from scratch. So I just copied the files from one project to another within the same repo.
Okay, but what you could have done here is delete this folder then. This one that's not used anymore. Just delete, because when there are folders there, they will click, they will waste time, like, why is this here? But this is not used, and then attention to
although
to this.
A note there, you have to remember to have the note. You have to remember to delete the note. If you remove the folder later. But so yeah, just the simplest thing.
So this is part of organization, right? That they were asking about as well. Okay. So add a little bit description of the decisions you made and why you made them. Remove unnecessary files that you just deleted, commit, It's still in the history. If you want to revert back at some point and find the files, they're still in the Git history. You're not going to lose those files.
Yeah.
But as soon as they open the project, they have a good experience here. Okay.
Okay.
Now let's open the project. Here it is. So here I can see that you have a project with one application target and 2 test targets.
Yeah.
Unit test bundle and UI test bundle. So did you write both unit tests?
No, I just wrote the unit tests, but I didn't touch the UI tests.
Again, in organization, I would then remove this
okay.
target here.
The UI test target, yeah.
Yes. So it's very simple, like everything is clean. It's okay. I like this, like simple application. What this application should do?
You mean
show some news?
The deliverables, right? Yes, so we need to use the New York Times API to fetch the top stories.
Okay.
Of the New York Times, yeah.
So yeah, for test projects, I really encourage people to go simple with the test setup. Don't create many modules, frameworks, just one application target and keep everything simple. So that's good. So are you using UIKit?
I used yes.
With a main storyboard?
Because of the because of the iOS deployment target, right? So I went with UIKit.
Okay. Yeah, you cannot use Swift UI with iOS 12. That's true. Okay, so the app starts with the main storyboard?
The app starts with the home view controller. So there is an XIV. If you open the home folder, yeah, so there is a home view controller XIV that loads from the AppDelegate.
Okay.
Okay. So, but if you have a main storyboard, you already get the setup with your app. So as soon as you run the app, it will create a window and load the main storyboard view controller, and then you replace it at runtime. And this can be a bit inefficient because you will create a window twice, one for the empty view controller here, and then for the actual one that you want.
I actually faced an issue with the main storyboard because for iOS targets with, I think it's iOS 15 and above, right? So we have also the SceneDelegate. So I had some hiccup there. If you set the window in the SceneDelegate and you don't set it correctly here, it won't load the screen or something like that. So that's why I decided not to go with that at all, because I was having too many issues to like get the targets right and loading the screen correctly, because sometimes it would load correctly on the iOS 12.0, but then when I would run it on iOS 15.0, when it would load it from the SceneDelegate, then it would not be correct.
Okay. So the SceneDelegate is only iOS 13 and above?
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yes, right.
Let's see. Yes, availability, iOS 13. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So you shouldn't be using SceneDelegate then.
Yeah.
So the way to do it is to remove the SceneDelegate from your application.
Okay.
Because you're also doing configuration
Yeah,
here, right?
because I had to set it here as well.
Okay, so you need to configure your app correctly, so you don't need the SceneDelegate. So main interface is already set to nothing. In the info P list, you can see the application manifest scene configuration.
I deleted it.
Oh, it's here, main. So you will load the main storyboard on iOS 13 and above. You will check the scene configuration and create the scene delegate for you. So if you're not using scenes and you want to support all iOS 12 and above with one app delegate, you can just remove this configuration from here.
Okay.
Even remove the main storyboard. There's this empty view controller as well. Remove things that are not needed. Okay. Should be able to remove the scene delegate now. Let's see. So this iOS simulator 15. Okay.
Yeah, that was the issue that I was having actually. It's just the black
Okay.
screen.
See. Okay, so you need to configure this correctly, otherwise you may have different behavior on iOS 15 and iOS 12.
Mm-hmm.
So we already remove it from here. App delegate. Okay. Do you remember, Bogdan, Mike, how to configure without the scene delegate?
I think
We did it in the quiz app.
I think one problem is in the app delegate, the entry point is at main, but it used to be at main application or something. UI application, yeah. So it changed around iOS 13, I think. So maybe that's okay.
There you go.
That's it. Okay. Fantastic.
So now this way you have one setup. It's always in the app delegate and it works for iOS 12, 13, 14, 15.
Got it.
Okay. So we can run the app. And we remove some unnecessary files. Because there you would create a window and then you would create, automatically if you have a main storyboard set up, you will automatically create a window with that main storyboard view controller, initial view controller.
Yes.
And then in code, you would create a new window and replace the window. And you would create two view controllers, two windows unnecessarily. So if you're not using the main storyboard, remove it, clean up the project, remove the references, and you're good to go. All right.
Yeah, should be clear what's the entry point of the app when you open the project, like whether it's storyboard or app delegate or scene delegate, like not all of them, or it's confusing. And
okay, so let's commit here. Fix app entry point into app delegate only. So this is one point. Organization, clean up the project. Good that there are no warnings. Sometimes you open projects and there's a bunch of warnings and it's not good. So perfect. Can we run the tests? We already saw that it has tests. Let's run the tests. Okay, the unit test finished and there's a failure. Now it's running the UI tests. But you didn't implement the UI tests.
No.
It's empty, but it's taking a lot of time. Still running. You would take snapshots of all the possible permutations of the user interface. Okay, it's taking too long. I'm going to stop this. So if you don't have UI tests, remove the UI test bundle here.
Okay.
It's going to speed up your development process. Well, if you're trying to maximize your time between work, studying, and applying to jobs, like This kind of things makes a huge difference. So we remove here. Now we can configure our scheme to run only with unit tests. Let's run. Boom, much faster. Done. Can even disable the debugger for when testing. Boom, done. Look how fast it is now.
Yeah.
But we have a failure. We have a failure.
Okay.
That could count negatively if there is a failing test. Let's have a look at it. First, let's commit. What have we done here? Remove unused UI test target. Where is the failure? Date format. It's probably a time zone problem. We are in different time zones, so it works for you. It doesn't work for me. The classic problem. We showed this in the program as well. That's classic. Especially if you're working a remote team, you can find it easily, But if everyone is in the same time zone, you feel like it's okay until someone travels to another place, tries to run the test, like, hey, that's not working for me. It works on my machine.
Yeah.
Classic.
Or
after there is like a time saving, time savings changes the time zone. Suddenly CI breaks and you don't know why.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so this test is dependent on the implicit time zone of my machine. And we are in different time zones.
Yeah, we are. I think
So
I'm
here
GMT plus 8.
Yeah, I'm GMT plus 2. So that's 6 hours difference. That could be the problem. Sometimes could be the next day for you, which for me is one day before. So here it's expected June 19. Where is the setup for this test?
We are testing the article view model, right? Yeah. So everything should... Oh yeah, it's the object. So I hard-coded it here.
Okay, so it is June 18.
Mm-hmm.
But then there is a time in a time zone, -4. Okay.
Yeah.
So that will be probably 19 for you, June 19th. But for me, it's June 18th.
Okay.
Because
so if you change it to June 18th, okay, yeah.
Yeah, it will pass for me, but it's not going to pass for you.
It was for
We need to solve
yeah.
this problem. That's the problem with time zones. We want our test to not be dependent on any environment detail, like time zones, calendars. All this makes a difference. Locales, because maybe in Portuguese, if my machine is in Portuguese, it will be junho.
Oh yeah, makes sense.
It also can break
Yeah.
depending on locale. So we need to protect against the environment in our test. We want our test to pass in any environment. It shouldn't have an influence. So let's see how the conversion is done. Date formatter, and then you get the components, year, month, day from date. So if you're lucky, your interviewer was in the same time zone as you or within bounds.
No. They were in Germany. They were in Germany, so no.
What is the time zone in Germany? GMT plus 1?
Plus 2, maybe. Yeah.
If it's like mine,
because
it
it's
would
6
fail.
hours. 6 hours difference.
Okay, yeah. So that's the same time zone I am in. Okay. So we need to solve this. One way is to pass the time zone.
Okay.
We showed this in the program. And you can have a default value of like the current time zone in production. But when you're testing it, you can pass a specific time zone to avoid issues.
Okay.
So since this is a method, now the arrow to return. And we can configure our calendar time zone. Let's use the same calendar. Okay, let's see. Let me go back here. Create a GMT time zone. Time zone. GMT time zone. Regardless where you're running, the time zone will be locked in the test. It's always GMT plus 0.
Plus 0.
So regardless where you are, it's not going to have an influence on the test passing or not. And if we account for GMT 0, it should be June 18th. Let's run the test. Actually, we need to fix production because now this is a method. But we don't need to pass anything because we get the default current time zone.
The default one.
Run the test. Super fast passing. Fantastic. So we protect our test from the environment. Okay, so when you open the project, expect no warnings. I should build without errors. Ideally, I don't need to install any dependencies to make it work. I just open the project and run it. Also, I can run Command U and run all the tests. It should be fast, and all the tests should pass.
Okay,
that's what
got it.
the initial. I'm not even looking at the code yet, I'm just looking at the structure first. Okay.
So is that a typical thing? Like interviewers, when they look at your project, they will go to the tests directly?
No,
like
they would
make sure
run the
that
tests.
Okay.
I only looked at the test because they failed. If they passed, I wouldn't
Mhm.
look at the test yet. I would go to the app.
Okay,
But
okay.
since there was a failure, now I'm interested. Now there's a problem here, It got my attention.
I got it.
But I want to open the project. I can build and I can run the tests, right? So building was fine. No warnings, no build errors, but the test was running fine. No build errors in the test target, but there was a test failure. Then I looked at it.
Mhm. Okay, got it.
Okay, so fix time zone issue in tests. Cool. Those are difficult things to do, like to catch these kind of errors, because you need to be mindful about it, because the test will always pass in your machine,
Mhm.
So it's things that you need to just keep in your mind. Like, okay, I'm running and testing something that has a date in the middle. Automatically in your head, this needs to come, okay, do I have a problem with calendars, with locales and time zones? I can see here that you're using a fixed locale, so you're not going to have issues with the translation. As I say, like this will never happen, regardless of my locale in my machine. Like, it's not going to have an influence in the test because you fixed the locale, right?
Yeah.
Oh no, actually, this locale here is just for the transformation of a string into a date. Here you just do it manually, the components day. Okay.
Oh,
Yeah, you may have
okay.
issues with locale.
Local.
Just that my machine is in English as well. But if it was in Portuguese, we would have issues.
Mhm.
Sorry, Bogdan, I cannot hear you. I can see you moving your mouth.
Yeah, or like any other. I know it was a failure for one of us here because of the locale. So
did it fail for you, Bogdan?
No, I think it was on Mike's machine.
Yeah,
mine was the one that working.
Did it show in Greek for you, Mike?
Yes, exactly.
Okay, so the month, the month, right?
Yes. I mean, exactly what you said before about Portuguese.
So you can also pass the locale here if you want to be safe in the test side.
Yeah.
Then you can pass like an English locale in the test or a Portuguese locale, and it's fixed. It's fixed for the test. Regardless of the environment, it's not going to change the result. So yeah, if it was an interview in Germany and they were running with German locale, the test would fail.
Fail, yeah.
For sure. So something else you can do. Pass the locale here. I'll leave as an exercise, okay?
Okay, sure.
So now the tests are passing. Let's run the app. Okay. It works. It runs. But now I want to know if it works as expected. What was the requirements?
The requirements were, so it must work in portrait and landscape.
Okay.
And then, so technically the app should have a list view. And in that list view, there needs to be an image, a title, and an author. And then in the detail view, there should be a navigation bar title, a large image, the article title, the article description, the author, and a see more button to open and preview the article. And the user should not leave the app while doing the see more thing. Yeah.
Okay. So this, what are you doing here? A web view?
No. They strictly said no web view. So we're calling another API and just, yeah.
Okay. So this is just a string that you're rendering here.
So yeah, so we're calling an API, another API from the New York Times to get the, I think it's called a short description of the article.
Okay.
Yeah, because I think from the APIs you can't get the full article. It's just like the short description. So I just rendered it here.
Okay, so the requirements, you're gonna make an API call to get all the top news, top stories.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Render them itself with image, title, author. If you tap on them, you go to the
Then there
detail
should be a
view.
navigation bar title. Mm-hmm.
Okay. And see more. Okay. Should it support dark mode?
Yeah.
Okay.
No, they did not say anything about that.
Okay. Because the logo
But I did not
disappeared
even
here.
test that actually. Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
Put in the list.
So appearance-wise, did they give you a specific design or like you just came up with it?
No, I just came up with it.
Okay, nice. I can see the images jumping a bit as I scroll.
Yeah, there should be like a caching thing. Or maybe it tries to, because we're loading the images from the URL that we get, right? So to load the image, we're doing like a separate call. So we're loading the image from a URL. So that's why maybe, yeah.
Okay,
So
so
I think
load
if
image.
we go to image, yeah, the extension of the UI image.
Load from URL.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so you dispatch async to a global queue and you download the image contents from
Mm-hmm.
that URL, and then you complete in the main queue. The problem with this approach is that you don't have a way of canceling the image request. So imagine it takes some couple of seconds to complete.
Mm-hmm.
And we ask for the image for cell number 1 here at index 1. And as you scroll, we reuse that cell here. And that image completes. It will show the wrong image for a split second or even keep the wrong image there. So as you were using cells, if you're using cells, right, which is advised to, you would have to cancel the request. But using dispatch queues and loading like this, there's no way to cancel that, right? It's not a
Mm-hmm.
cancelable operation.
Yeah.
And also, if it fails, it would be nice to have a way of retrying.
Okay.
Usually like a button, like we teach in the program, you have a button that you can tap and retry loading the image.
Okay, got it.
Either retry automatically or give the user the option of retrying it. But there's a problem here with maybe presenting the wrong image in the wrong at the wrong index path
Cell at the beginning, yeah.
as you're scrolling. After it's cached, it's less likely to happen, but can still happen because you cannot guarantee order of execution in a global queue. So Mike Bogdan, what would you use here instead of dispatch queue?
Yeah, session.
URL session?
Yeah, so I think I want to stop here for a second on this API data with contents of URL. I wouldn't recommend using this in a production environment just because it's a synchronous API that behind doors will do a network connection and only return when it's ready. So you have no control over it. You cannot cancel it. You cannot control. I even think the thread it runs on. I mean, over here you could dispatch it on a specific queue, but if you would not do that, I think it would wait on the main thread for background thread or something like that. So it's I think it's just a test API in my opinion. So you could use it to, I don't know, hack something really quickly, but that's not a production API you should be using. So that for me, that's a, I don't know, yellow flag, if I can call it like that. Not a red one, but definitely something that I would not like to see in a test project. So like Mike said, URL session APIs, URL connection, if it's like older project and needs to, like, URL sessions not available or something like that, or any of the newer variations with combiner, but definitely not this API or any. I think there are similar APIs where you just plug in a URL and you get a download operation which is synchronous.
You can also do like string,
contents
can get a string with contents of a URL or file as well.
Yeah, file as well.
It's good when you're prototyping and you want to load something quickly to see on the screen. It's synchronous, but it's not very efficient because, of course, you don't want to do this in the main queue. So you're going to dispatch it in a global queue. The problem now is that a global queue is an abstraction on top of threads. And a global queue is concurrent. It's trying to run as many operations as possible at the same time. So global queues are concurrent. And there is this mantra of never blocking a concurrent queue because the concurrent queue wants to run things concurrently. So what happens when you block a concurrent queue? You will create a new thread. And it will create a new thread to run that other operation in parallel. So you have the called thread explosion because you are blocking a concurrent queue and it keeps spinning new and new threads to be able to run things. And it's going to overload all the threading system of the operational system. Your app can even be killed because it's abusing the system, right? And especially in a table view, because here you can say, okay, there are 20 top stories, but this doesn't scale if you have an infinite number of stories, right? That you can paginate as you scroll, like infinite scrolling. You can literally, if you're scrolling fast, you can very quickly use a lot of resources, and the OS may just decided to terminate the app. So yeah, that's I would also say a yellow warning.
Okay.
So avoid using APIs that are synchronous for loading things like URLs in concurrent queues, especially. And also you don't want to do in the main queue, otherwise you'll be very laggy. Your UI will be like moving very slowly.
Yeah.
So instead we use URL, we can use URL session here, right? And the good thing is that you get a data task back that you can cancel as well. So you could return here URL session data task. And whoever called this API can cancel the request. So
if it doesn't make sense right now, don't worry. All these things are in the program, in detail. So
Okay.
yeah, you'll see that.
you get the data, the response, the error, and you handle. If you get the response, you call here exactly like if let data equals data. Like very similar to what you have here, but through this API here. So you start the task and you return it. You also handle error, right? This is just a prototype. You need to complete this code here.
Mm-hmm.
Then else will complete. No, was it new? Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
Right. Now the color of this function, who calls it? The image view.
Yeah, it's at the bottom.
Maybe we can propagate that.
So Micah, why it's important to return that task is just think about this scenario. You have many images here. If you scroll, you will start many separate tasks that download the image, but you don't want everyone to complete in the order you started it, because if you scroll to, I don't know, story 10, you want to see the image for story 10 before you see all the previous 9 ones which are not showing. So as you scroll, it's ideal to cancel those or decrease the priority, but let's say for simplicity, just cancel them. So you use the bandwidth you have to download what's on screen. That's the most important thing, to have this immediate feedback. So otherwise, you would just wait for every download to complete before you have the bandwidth to execute that request. So that's why it's important to have the option with your API to have that task, so you can cancel it. So that's what Kaya's been building right now. That's
I have actually another question about the UI image extension, right? So as you saw, I am making the request from the extension. So I am loading the image from there. So is it better to actually load that image from that cell's view model instead of
Yes,
the
outside. I wouldn't say in the view model, but somewhere outside of the view. That's a recommendation I was about to give, because we don't want the UI making this kind of requests. The API, right? Because maybe we're gonna introduce some kind of caching in between. Like, I don't want my cell knowing where the provenance of the image data. So I would move that somewhere else where I can cache in memory or cache it in a file system, and I can compose it differently. And the UI is the same. It doesn't need to know about this, who loads the request. Right now, the view is talking to the URL session and making the requests. And in the program, we show exactly our recommendation how to do it. And you separate this from the view model and even from the view. Like, so the view models and the views are very simple to test.
Okay, so ideally the request should be made by this screen's view model rather than from the extension or from the cell's view model. Is that right?
I wouldn't do it in the extension. I wouldn't do it in the view layer.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And when I completed this code here, you will see one of the reasons why.
Okay, got
Here,
it.
I would say like image view, the load image, and then we hold a reference to that task.
Mm-hmm.
So when we say reuse cell, we can cancel any running task, for example. Right? So we solve the problem of showing the wrong image.
Okay.
But there's another problem here, because prepare for reuse is only called when the cell is going to be reused, which means until that cell is going to be reused, the operation is running, even though it may not be needed anymore, because a cell may be removed from the table view. It's not visible anymore, but it's not yet going to be reused. So this may happen too far, but there are methods like in the table view delegate that says did this cell did remove cell, like I forgot the precise name, but did disappear or something. Cell did disappear. And also have the prefetching APIs where you can proactively prefetch the images so it loads much faster. But you cannot do prefetching in the view layer, right? Because the
Right.
cell is only created when it's needed, and then it's reused. So that's why it shouldn't be in the view. It should be in a higher level. You can move it to the, to a higher level that has access to these delegate methods. And we're going to show there exactly how to do it in the program.
Okay.
Yeah.
So for now, at least you would do something like this to prevent errors.
Okay.
I was gonna, because Mike asked if we are gonna put it in the view layer or in the view model, and I think the answer is neither, because you want to decouple it furthermore. So that's another thing you'll see there, as this is like downloading an image is no different than downloading any data, like the content of the story feed you are showing. So it belongs in the network layer. Yeah, of course, if this controller will have a view model, if you're using MVVM, then yeah, that's gonna talk to some service or other component that's doing the networking for the image as well, and that's where you put that. But there's a clear separation. The view model is, its role is to like prepare the data to be presented on the UI. It's not to make downloads, like image downloads or any other operations with these images. So you see, since it's a different responsibility, it will have a different component that's doing it. So everything, these small responsibilities gets a different component. That's why you have this composability, testability, all the traits of a good architecture if you do these separations. Otherwise, if you are trying to fit everything into the pieces of MVVM, then you're kind of stuck with this decision. Do I put it in the view or in the view model? Where no, if it's a different responsibility, it should be a different thing. No.
Okay, got your point.
That's kind of it. But like we're trying to maybe adapt to the solution you already have, so we're not showing a full re-architecting of this project, but maybe like just making some small improvements here and there.
Okay.
So at least we can cancel now that request at some point, right? At least before reusing, so we eliminate one problem from it. Because as Bogdan was saying, if you just start making requests, and those images can be quite, maybe you can say, no, the images are quite small, they're going to load fast. Well, maybe on Wi-Fi, but maybe on 3G or GPRS, like it's not going to be fast. And the way like URL session works, or loading the URL like loading system in iOS, if you're making many requests, it will at some point start queuing things. An API request will be queued. So if you're running 100 requests at the same time, which is very easily to scroll 100 items, right? You will start 100 requests. But maybe the OS will judge that based on their bandwidth, I can only run 10 at a time. So the first 10 images will be running, even though I want to see image 100, because that's what's on screen right now, it's going to have to load 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, until it gets to the 100. And there will be a problem, because for a long time, the screen you're looking at will not load the image, because it's loading images that I don't need anymore. Right? That's why you need to find a solution that you can cancel requests when not needed anymore, to give you that very smooth experience to the users. And if you're looking for a senior level, this is the kind of things that will, change the path. If you get these things right, you're much more likely to go to a mid, more senior level path in those interviews, because it shows that you have this extra understanding of the system, of the APIs. You can even do some prefetching, to provide a more smooth experience. Okay. So what is here? article view controller, you also use that.
Yeah.
Okay, here we don't need it because we don't reuse it, so we don't need to cancel it. Or we could actually say, you know what, when we release the, let's say you click here and it's loading the image and I press back, I can cancel the request, right?
Yeah.
So we could hold here the image task. Var, private var image task URL, and init cancel request. Also shows that you care about resource allocation and all the data bandwidth.
One
if
thing
the more
which
junior people would skip, more likely.
Yeah, Bogdan.
just wanted to make another comment here. So a lot of people may think that if you show images in a table view like this, they are small, like it doesn't matter. But I actually checked right now, and this is the case for many apps. The image you're downloading is a big image. So the bandwidth and the time it's going to take to load that image is quite high. So that's why it's important to have these options to cancel, to stop. Also, rendering these images will take a lot of time because now, for instance, I checked the first images is, I don't know, 1600 by 1000. Then the system needs to scale that image to be able to display it in a, I don't know, 200 by 300 container. So those things add up. So sometimes there are many strategies. I don't want to go into like scaling, making sure you download maybe if there's an image available for the size you're looking for and those kind of optimizations. But I was just making this point that maybe you can check and understand what kind of images you're actually bringing in, but what's the average size. So you need to do these optimizations, like being able to cancel requests and everything, because those can be like, I don't know, 1 megabyte, 2 megabyte for each image. They can add up, and it's a big cost depending. Yeah,
I mean, it's important. Like sometimes I'm roaming and you pay like €5 per megabyte. It's crazy. So imagine you open an app, you scroll like this, and you spend €50.
Yeah.
So need to be careful as well. Also check if the API you're talking to allows you to pass like width and height parameters when downloaded the image to already get a resized image that is much smaller. But sometimes they didn't provide you an API, they can do that, so that's fine. But you can think about caching as well. It's just that I think it's too much for a test project to do the caching part.
Yeah, that's the part that I was a bit confused about as well. Like in a test project, how far should you go to ensure that everything is done well? I mean, I get that there are some basic things like to really like the system should work well. Like how far can you go, because the time is limited as well.
Yes. The thing will be here, the guidelines they send you. If they didn't say anything about caching, there will be a bonus. They would not disqualify you if you don't do it, right? But the things they provided here, it needs to be solid. It needs to be solid, the things they care about here. So quality and testing, we found a problem in the testing that could count negatively. Also can check like the coverage. What did you test? You test the view models.
The networking layer as well.
The endpoints. But do you have tests for the mapping of the data with the dates? You can also have issues there. Translating the JSON to models.
I don't think I did. but I forgot a bit because it's been like 1 month ago. But let me check very quickly. Oh yeah, I see in my mock top stories loader, I have a mock response, a mock JSON response that I think I used to. Oh yeah, but I did not test the mapping though. I think it was a direct.
Okay. Let's see. We have here in the.
But for this part, I know that in the course there is a better way to do the testing for the networking layer, right?
Yes.
Where I think we use the URL protocol or something similar. I forgot the name.
Yeah, that's for testing the HTTP client, but for testing the actual mapping, we have like very simple strategies you can use, and you don't even need to stub anything. And here you can also define your model. Let's say you have a date. I saw that in the test that we were passing the string, the ISO 8601 version. So here you could use the date. Use a JSON decoder somewhere because it's codable. Coder article API. Yeah. So when you are decoding, you can create your decoder and set the decoder date strategy to this one. And that's it. You get the mapping automatically. Then you can deal only with dates instead of dealing with strings everywhere. You can simplify your code a lot.
Same for the URL.
Okay.
Where
here, yeah, this could be a URL as well, because if this is a string, then you need, at some point you're gonna have to cast it into a URL. You're gonna have to create a URL from string, but that's a failable initializer, right? And then you need to, what should I do if it fails? If you deal with this at the API level, you already have a URL. You know that it's a URL because the type system is enforcing that, right?
Yep.
And URL is codable, right? So you get this for free. The URL is already codable. Date is codable. String is codable. So setting the right types here, you get the decoding handled for you. And in your application, you only deal with the strong types already that already parsed.
Okay.
So leave this as an exercise as well. Define your codable model exactly with the types you need. Rewatch the networking layer in the academy.
Yeah.
It's going to clarify this point as well.
Also on that model object, I think we used vars everywhere, and probably we should have used constant lets for declaring, because there's no way we can alter, like change an article locally, right? We only get it from an external source and display it. So this shows that you're building an even stronger API, whereas with vars, there's the possibility that somebody just comes in and makes changes to this. Yeah. And it's fine if that's the use case you need to support, but if you don't, it's a lot safer to just set them as lets in the.
Okay, so the mapping, also test it. So test the mapping and define your models with stronger types like URLs and dates instead of everything string. Because JSON decoder can deal with that. You just need to pass the strategy you're using. In this case, this is the one you should use. It's going to simplify a lot your production code and your tests as well. You're also going to learn how to unit test view controllers there. Because even though you have a lot of the logic in the view model, which is good, and you can unit test the view model simply without the view controllers, you may still have problems in the view controllers configuration, because there's a lot of logic here. So we can run the app. I saw a bug here. Let me see if I can replicate it. If I try to refresh, it gets stuck.
Oh.
Now, I don't know why, but there is a problem here. So refresh control.
It's here.
So eventually we need to stop the refresh control, right? Where did receive data? Okay, could it be something like this? It was too fast. And why are you calling layout if needed here? Is there a reason?
I think there was some UI bug before. I think when it was in landscape mode, it was not resizing well or something like that.
Okay. Because that can cause issues at runtime.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a bit jumpy, the UI. That needs to be fixed as well. So check it out. Why is it not where you should end refreshing the data based on your architecture, but it should end this eventually. Otherwise, you'll be showing that forever. You can see you have a coordinator here. What is it? What does it do?
Yeah, it just pushes the other view controller.
Okay, here you could have just inlined it if you are doing it already inside the view controller. I would probably just inline it like this.
Okay.
Because
okay, no need for
coordinator
the
is not.
coordinate.
Yeah, it's not adding any level of abstraction because it's very concrete. Everything is very concrete. You need to pass navigation controller and then call push view controller with article. So you already have access to all those dependencies from there. If you want to actually decouple it from the view controller, it can be done, and that can be beneficial as well. You could do something like this. Or handle selection, where you can pass a, what is it, an article detail?
Yeah.
An article.
I think it's the detail one.
Okay. So we just have an polymorphic interface here, a closure. There could be anyone that can receive an article detail or return void. It should handle the selection. So when there's a selection here, simply call, is this article detail, okay. Handle selection, and you pass the article, and all of this goes away.
Yeah. Okay.
And when you compose the view controller, where do you do it? In the AppDelegate? Yeah. You can create your detail coordinator, and you set the view controller handle selection to be the view controller push, what was it called, the method? Push view controller. Okay. Where's the navigation controller? Okay, let's just move this down. We need the view controller. Detail view controller. We set the view controller handle selection. Now there's a benefit of having the coordinator because we separated navigation logic from the view controller, which means if we decide to present it as a model, we present it in different contexts, show like open a URL on Safari, you know, that's done externally. So the view controller is agnostic of what happens. It just delegates the message. Hey, an article has been selected. Someone needs to handle it. Then there's a benefit of a coordinator. If you're doing everything in line, just much simpler to just push the controller directly without the coordinator, and it still works. But now we decouple the view controller from the article coordinator and from handling the navigation. There can be a benefit there as well.
Mm-hmm.
So just creating a coordinator is not enough. It needs to introduce a level of abstraction that is needed in the project. All right. Any other feedback? Bogdan, Mike?
Yeah, I mean, many things like the layout there as well, the collection view flow layout, it's set. Like the whole configuration is in the code, but I believe there's some in the storyboard done, the nib as well. So centralizing.
Also, the logic here is it tries to cast the collection view layout into a flow layout. And if it fails, it creates a new layout, sets the property but never uses it, right? So in this case of failure, nothing happens. I think it's better to just deal with optional in this case, like this. If this layout is not a flow layout, like we don't need to create one, right? But if we create it, it would be important to set the collection view layout to that new layout.
Okay.
But as Mike said, all of this can be done in the nib. So you're setting the estimated size as automatic. So if we select here your collection view, you can decide here the layout is flow layout. Okay, that's correct already. And in the collection view estimated size, you can set automatic.
Okay.
So if you're doing code, no problem. You do everything in code. But if you're using C, then it's like you don't need to set in both places,
Mm-hmm.
right? You do everything in there. Less code to write. Cool.
Yeah, what I would stress here is the creation of the view model, which happens like the view controller is creating its own instance of the view model. And that's like maybe an anti-pattern if you want to test it properly, because now you cannot, unless it's a var, no, it's a let. So you cannot inject a different instance. I mean, ideally you should have an abstraction, so not a concrete type if you want to test it. But it's fine if you're coupling the view model with the view as well. So that can work. But the problem is you cannot inject any other dependencies. So I think the golden rule is never create your own dependencies. You should inject it.
Mm-hmm.
Have a convenience init view model. Because another problem with this is that now the view controller needs to create its own view model, and then it needs to depend on the dependencies of the view model as well. Every time this changes, we have a new dependency. We need to pass it here. Or if we want to compose this view controller with a different loader, we won't be able to because it's very concrete and we cannot change it. It's not changeable. So here we can define it here, self init and self.viewModel equals viewModel. And this can be now a var private. You're going to write tests for the view controller as well. How about you creating it from a nib? So if you're creating from a nib before iOS 13, you cannot use constructor injection. What do? Property injection. Ideally, you want constructor injection, but before iOS 13, it's not possible with storyboards or nibs. On iOS 13 and above, if you're using storyboards instead of nibs, then you can use constructor injection. But since you support iOS 12,
Yeah.
use property injection instead. So in the composition, where is it? SceneDelegate,
The
AppDelegate.
AppDelegate.
So the view model is the home view model with the loader, which is the remote loader. Okay. So you move creation of the dependencies to the composition layer, which makes this view controller more testable, more flexible, to be able to be composed with the view model with different kinds of services, loaders. This is the kind of things that for senior positions they will be checking, that doing this kind of separation of dependencies and creation of dependencies, these start qualifying more and more to a senior role.
Okay.
All right. And I think that's it for me. Mike, Bogdan?
I mean, covered so many things.
Yeah.
No, like I think Micah, you just need to follow, consistently the program.
Yeah, I think a lot of problems would have been solved by following the program diligently.
Obviously, I mean, these are exactly the things that we believe in and we strive. So, like this list there.
Yeah, everything here is there. Now, I
MVC.
don't discourage MVC. I don't see any problem with MVC. I think MVC, MVVM, MVP are fine. And in the program, we teach you all of them. So if you are in the interview and they say MVC strongly discouraged, no problem. You have MVVM and MVP as options that we teach there as well.
Okay.
And yeah, everything, quality and testing. You have other options to MVC, all the design patterns for composition, for creation of patterns, organization as well, separation of concerns, clean code, and not using dependencies. We created this whole application there in the program. We use 0 dependencies.
Got it.
Yes, so yeah, so it was a great session. I like that we didn't focus only on code because there are other things that are important as well.
Yeah, I think the most important lesson for me out of this session is to reverse engineer the process of applying and to focus more on education rather than, you get so focused on applying and getting out there that you just burn that step and then nothing goes well after that.
Yes, there'll be a bottleneck somewhere, right? If there's one of the steps here that we don't pay attention to, that's probably going to become a problem at some point.
Yeah. But thank you very much for all the advice. I really appreciate it. And thank you for the time to code review the project as well. I know that it takes time and it's not easy. So I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for joining us. I hope it was helpful.
Yes, really helpful. Thank you.
I'll send you the link to the session as well so you can rewatch it. Take notes, because I know that when you're live here, sometimes it's hard to keep track of everything.
Yeah, I tried to take a few notes, but yeah, that would be really helpful as well.
Awesome. All right. So thank you and see you next time.
Okay, thank you very much. Bye-bye. Have a good day.
Bye.
You too. Bye. All right. Hello, everyone. In the chat, golden words. Negotiate when you enter in the company. It's much easier to negotiate when you're entering. If you already enter with a high salary, with a good position, it's much easier to maintain that. But of course, in a specific position that you're ready for, right? So you don't burn out.
Yes. So sometimes what happens is you apply for a job, and because maybe the company really needs a candidate, they're willing to give you an extra, I don't know, percentage on your salary. So you get hired with a bit higher salary than you actually worth. So when the next negotiation is gonna come, you're definitely not gonna get an increase. So that's one of the reasons you usually don't see like big increases after you get the job. So yeah, I totally agree with this principle. I try to negotiate before joining because you never know how it's gonna work. So it's just good to get that established.
I see a lot of people that join a company and then realize that they accept a very low salary for what they were supposed to get. And that was a mistake in negotiation, and the company maybe took advantage of it or just went with it. And then they decide to go and ask for a raise. And that's very hard because, like, come on, you just agreed to this. And now you're going to go back on your word and say, hey, I want a higher salary. And that's hard. It's not going to look good on you. They're going to think like, oh, just think about money. They start thinking about replacing you probably because you made an agreement, you signed a contract, and 3 months later you'd like, I want to change the contract. That's tough. That's very hard to do. Unless you're so exceptional, they were like, oh, you're doing so much. Like it happened to me in some positions where they increased my salary before 1 year, without me asking for it, right? So when they realize it, that you're definitely below a position that you should be there, they enjoy working with you and they have good practices in their company structure in HR, they will promote you.
Negotiation is tough.
Yeah.
Tough
Especially
here.
because we're developers, we're not negotiators. Like it's not a skill that most people have, like, born with. We're not salespeople. Most developers, like including me, we are more introverts, right? We don't like confrontation directly. It's difficult. And negotiation is very confrontational. And usually negotiating with negotiators, that's what they do. They're specialists in it. So for sure you're gonna lose this game.
Yeah. Because they play it with every other employee they manage, right? You're
Yes.
just doing it once every year.
It
Doesn't
implicitly creates this risk, and like as developers, I think we're very risk averse, so you don't want to go there. And yeah, like, but if you do know how these things work, and what we're discussing here, like you can prepare and expect, how to behave and how to handle the situation. So super important.
Yeah.
See, Nassim saying that he's never seen clean code in a big company. It's rare. I've seen it. It exists. But it needs to come from a very strong culture, like team of excellence and quality. It's possible. It doesn't mean a project is bad because the code is not 100% clean. There's a lot of good projects out there that there are parts of the code that is a mess and they just don't see an incentive of fixing it right now. There's a lot of big projects that they started with 1-2 people just going as fast as possible. They become extremely successful. They went from 2 developers to 200 developers, and they're trying to keep things as they were without breaking it. It's very difficult. So the project is very successful, but they took a lot of shortcuts, and it's gonna eventually start slowing them down. Can we have some protocol coordinator that handles the selection? It doesn't need to be a protocol. I usually don't create protocols for coordinators. I use simple closure, as we showed. Thank you everyone for joining. See you soon.
Bye, y'all.